You are watching Xirtus.
In Terminator 3, they talk about how like every time over Skynet just has to happen. It just happens over and
Right,
over again.
right, right. In every alternative reality.
Yeah, there's a way of Skynet, but I think that's the thing is that people will latch onto the words for themselves because I mean, a it makes sense, a Skynet, and b
Right.
Yeah.
because it is referencing the Terminator that it's this all-encompassing thing that will transition everything, and I've been thinking about it more and more because our last conversation and a lot of people since because everybody is kind of coming up to this thing on what's going to happen with AI is that scene in Terminator 3 when it all happens. I don't know if you remember this movie, Terminator 3, but I love Terminator. I mean, you're not wrong, but in Terminator 3,
Yeah.
in
She
Terminator
was hot
3,
too. I like this Terminator. If
yeah,
I was
right.
gonna be dominated by a robot, this would probably be it.
You would
I
love
might
to
just
say, and
might just let her in. I'll be like,
You
okay,
are so terminated.
have
you
your
were
way with it.
you were ready to live in Venice Beach and Santa Monica. I'll tell you
Yeah.
what, there's segues. But so
Well,
this
for this
Elon
one, I
lady,
take the
bots are
blue
just not
pill.
doing it for me yet. Yeah,
do you
this one
remember
might have
how?
to.
Do you remember how like it all comes together? Because she picks up her cell phone, or whatever happened, and she calls and she dial up modems Skynet, and it's a really short little phrase. It's like that's like all it takes. I don't know how.
AOL.
Automation, yeah.
I don't want to go
Well,
full like
also
not.
the Matrix. It's funny you were talking about that Matrix. The lady who does the Matrix movie and the
Yeah, yeah.
Terminator. And I
Yeah.
actually thought I invented that plot that they would come together in my mind. I
Oh
was like,
God.
I wanted to write the movie the Terminatrix, which I
Oh,
couldn't come
yeah.
up with the name of it, and I was going to use that, but supposedly it turns out that that was the way it was all along. But the Matrix supposedly was actually like a DARPA thing that they were talking about, and they actually had paperwork on actually using for actually data storage, not memory. That the military is actually looking into using humanoid brains in matrices like virtual worlds as storage computers
Absolutely. And,
back
but
in the
what's
day.
and also is so they do this now and they've shown DNA as
Because I mean
storage, which is
the battery terminology is just dumb. Because I
yeah.
mean, why not use dogs or like something that
For
that
real,
you don't
though,
have to
yeah.
trick
Well,
so well. I'd be like,
because
okay,
Yeah.
we can
and
use something a little dumber.
What
but
about the
so
human centipede? No,
right. No,
sorry.
that's
Mm,
that is the singularity. And so this idea, and don't get me wrong, because like I'm a big fan of this idea of learning how data exists. Biomimicry, like we were taught in school, is where we learn how nature does it instead of trying to change nature necessarily, which is the other way,
mm.
which is kind of even scarier. There's actually people that are even more Monsanto than us, but still, they want to teach DNA how to store Shakespeare. And apparently, blood, you can store billions and billions and billions and billions of gigabytes. It's just crazy how,
Yeah.
depending on how you look at it, there's stacks of algorithmic ways of
I
storing data.
actually have a theory that either Bill Gates or Fauci or maybe all of them. That this is something nobody ever really talks about. So you go back to the Anunnaki, right, where they talk about the Sumerian tablets, right, and they say, well, the Anunnaki, they came from another planet, they came from a star, and then they brought down and they altered their genetic code and they made them their slaves. But I mean, has that ever crossed anyone's mind that they could have just been from an alternate continent and came in from the sky and told when they ask them where are you from, we're like, yeah, we're from the stars, bro, because they don't want them finding out like we're from America. Let's say
Right.
nowadays America flies in a plane, goes to the Congo, and injects these people, and it alters their DNA. And so they go, well, these guys came in these spaceships, and they
Well,
look
that's
different than us,
basically
and they're
the.
so
Ironically, that's literally the story of the conquistadors, right? They thought they were
Right.
these silver prophesied characters that rode in on magic
right.
ships, and in a way, they fit the profile enough that they lived up to it to get away with
Yeah, and
just
I mean,
completely
if
destroying their culture.
maybe there was even genetic modification going on at that point, and to where people like in Atlantis or in some other high, like almost where we're at right now, where people are wanting to be taller or wanting to be blue, or it's fashionable to be tall
Right.
and blue, and so all of the people coming over look like these aliens, but they're actually some kind of humanoid that was
Don't.
actually
We did get into
interfering
this
with them in the
idea
first
though that
place.
the idea that the Venus Earth triple, even for flat earthers, there's some idea that everything is everything and everything is one thing. But for space heads, it's that Theia crashed into Earth and out came the moon and it's made of proto-Earth. And this is the mainstream science story. But also that Venus spins the wrong way, which if you remember from the Anunnaki myth that they come from Nibiru, which is associated with our sun and the Sirius system of Sirius A and Sirius B, which are spinning this other direction. And so the idea would be that we have these many cycles versus this one counterclockwise cycle for 5,000 of our many tiny cycles. And that feels like 1 year to them, 5,000 of our cycles.
You know what? Zecharia Sitchin is a very particular type of disinformationist.
Yeah.
In the for real, because in like when I first read the 12th Planet in my early 20s or whatever, I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna read it. I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to see what this is. And I go through it and I kind of entertain it. And then I go, okay, first page, just cross-reference, analyze whatever he's saying, the Shem thing with the name. They wanted to build a spaceship for themselves, name a spaceship, whatever. And it was just, and I can't help but wonder, so Zecharia Sitchin, he had an office at the UN. I don't know if that's attached close to Lucis Trust type stuff or what his deal is, but he's always kind of come across to me as the same way that I relate to somebody like Kenneth Anger, where it's with what's that called, Hollywood Babylon, where it's this is a book that absolutely contains real information in the midst of a lot of bullshit. And I gotta say, experientially with Sitchin, I went through that and I'm like, dude, I have to throw over half this book out in my mind, and then something makes me consider, what do they have in those archives at the Vatican, relating to the Sumerian stuff? I think that there's something to it, and I really feel like somebody like Sitchin, not that he's the only one, distinct from Chariots of the Gods, because that guy who wrote that, he went and changed things when he was corrected, and I was actually kind of humble about it, hey, I'm trying to actually get somewhere. Whereas Zecharia Sitchin is somebody he'll just react to somebody and go, no, I don't care. Even if it's somebody who reads Cuneiform or whatever, and they, as few people there are on the planet that actually do, they tell him whatever. He's not gonna, I don't know, man. I'm just saying, it's, yeah.
A part of it's the Zahi Hawass effect, where it's this old archaeology way of I'm not changing my view, regardless of whether he's controlled or not. Sitchin he was one of 3 people translating cuneiform back then. So
Cuneiform, that's how you say it. Thank you. Sorry.
Cuneiform. Yeah, he's one of the only ones at the time. And so his translation was king for a while, or in a way it was, until a couple of people started coming in and being like, that's not necessarily what that means. Right. And it's I don't know, he could just be, he could completely believe what he wrote. You know what I mean? Because again, the symbolism, it's so easy to look at it in many different ways.
So just to clarify, just because apparently you guys know a lot more about this kind of stuff than I do. I'm not super mega esoteric, but I just have a broad spectrum of everything. So with the cuneiform, has that been verified? I mean, it's they use what, the Rosetta Stone? Is that how they figured it out? Was it the Rosetta Stone?
Isn't it included in the Rosetta Stone in part?
So there's a few different ways. The Rosetta Stone is supposed to be a major key unlocking, but we've done videos with David Ewing Jr. who thinks cuneiform is totally nonsense and not true.
Interesting.
It depends on who you're talking to.
What do you mean? They literally made up the language and it's a whole
there are people that think that everything is basically made up. Basically everything.
Okay, but if we go down that path, then we have to cross through all of the comparative mythology and religion. And that's a real problem when it starts to add up into history.
Right.
And history that we can verify, not shit that is probably controlled.